Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. Hey, parents, do you want your kid to grow up to be super smart and do great things like be the U.S. ambassador to Japan? Well, get them some Usagi Yojimbo comics at your local comic book shop, and your kid will get smart. I love Usagi Yojimbo. All right, parents, take your kids to a comic book shop. They'll get smart. All right. Hey, weebs. You know how there's like this entire comic book industry in Japan telling like Japanese comic book stories? Well, Stan Sakai is basically not like the hold my beer meme, but like, here, hold my sake meme as I show you how to tell Japanese stories in my Western influence style. Wow. So I've reviewed some Usagi Yojimbo comics before. I said this is one of the best comics to have when you're like trapped in the airport overnight and you're sad and you just want a really good kick-in story. I think he either came out of retirement or semi-retirement and started telling Usagi Yojimbo stories again. It was kind of a big deal. I am not an Usagi Yojimbo buff. I think I've read like the first 3 volumes collecting his work, and I love them so much that I said I want to read all of this guy's work. So I'm diving in and buying the floppies as they're coming out because I want to see what he's up to. But that means I don't like know like all the history of Usagi's, dozens and dozens and dozens of volumes worth of adventures. But that's okay because Stan Sakai is a storyteller. And if you're a weeb and you don't like Western comics, my pitch to you on Usagi Yojimbo is no one on the planet loves Japanese folklore and storytelling more than Stan Sakai does. And he's telling Japanese style stories almost without any reference to the modern manga style. It's purely his style. If you love Japan, if you don't want to be a weeb, but you want to be like the Chad Japanese cultural enthusiast, Stan Sakai is your sensei. So this is one where I was previously reviewing The Hidden, and then I moved, and I wasn't going to my local comic book shop for a while, so I think I missed the ending of The Hidden. But he's starting a new story with issue 1, and I even, like, for the first few pages, I was, like, a little confused. I wasn't sure if I was liking it as much. I kind of like the down-to-earth, almost like crime stories, like Zatoichi inspired and Yojimbo inspired. Sakai is also interested in like the folklore. He's interested in everything Japan pretty much. So he'll also do ghost stories. He'll do fantasy. He'll do Godzilla inspired stories. So even though I kind of like prefer the down to earth stories, he did his storyteller thing where he grabbed my attention and he wrapped me in. And pulled me into the world of the new narrative he wants to build, because that's just all he does. So it opens up with a few scenes of Sasuke. Where's his name? Sasuke! It's Sasuke, everybody! Hey, Naruto, go get Sasuke! But Sasuke is fighting some demons, and he's serving this like kind of like big anti-demon god figure. And meanwhile, a odd little samurai story is taking place, and it turns out it's I'm going to spoil everything, by the way. It's Japanese puppet theater, and this is where like all the great nerdy research comes in. Is he just sort of like tells you some interesting little things about Japanese puppet theater, and these little details like reveal the history and the culture and kind of the philosophical attitude of Japan. There's all of this emphasis on mastering your craft, on obeying your master, on spending 10 years in the industry just to get promoted to the second position and then spending 10 years in that. So just so you can have like a higher position. It's a very work ethic centric culture. I think it's interesting how the West has kind of been obsessed with Japan since the era of the Impressionists in the 1800s. There was like a weeb craze in the 1800s where all the Impressionists were buying Japanese prints because they recognized this was a completely different style of art than anything we had been doing in the West, and they were fascinated by it. What I like about Stan Sakai is maybe in contrast to the modern manga industry, which is an industry. It has its own kind of like set of rules and styles and, audience. Like Shonen Jump manga are very Shonen Jumpy. Shoujo manga tend to follow a very shoujo pattern. But Sakai is kind of more interested in antique Japan, feudal era Japan, and the classic Japanese ghost stories. So when he kind of like taps into maybe like the thing that made Japan the unique culture that it was that so fascinated the world for most of history. So after kind of like getting you interested in this little, he does a good thing. So I don't know who Sasuke is. I haven't read volume 26 and volume 27 of Usagi Yojimbo, but he tells me just enough that Usagi's a little suspicious of this guy. He's like a ghost hunter. He seems to have like this creepy ability to read minds or sense demons around him. And Usagi's clearly just like a regular guy, and he doesn't like getting wrapped up into these paranormal activity stuff. So after that, there is an establishing scene where it's just sort of building the mood and getting me closer and closer. And I won't spoil the last page, but it's the setup for the next volume, and I'm hooked. I want to go read volume issue 2. I'm excited. Even though I don't like, even though I like the kind of like, you know, Usagi Yojimbo goes and he fights a crime boss, you know, kind of down-to-earth, realistic story a little bit more. Sakai is always getting you hooked, and I think his strength is pages like this where he's just taking a break and building up the scenery and the location to create like this emotional effect where you're intrigued. You want to know what happens next. All right, 5 minutes. Yeah, I want to read this. Hey, parents, do you want your kids to be super duper smart? Well, get a Usagi Yojimbo comics. Look at all this. This is like a Wikipedia article that Sakai probably just researched all by himself. Like, he has researched the lengths of the necks of different samisen to explain, to kind of, because he's researching, he wants you to feel like you're going back to ancient Japan, so he cares about all of this nerdy, you know, tiny little detail stuff to immerse you and get you interested in the world. I won't read it all. That's why you should go to the comic book store, parents, so then your kid can read all this stuff, and they'll understand Japanese culture history, and they'll be super duper smart. Comic books make kids smart. Get them, parents. All right. There are like 50 variant covers for this. I got the Sakai cover. I guess my comic book store didn't get all of the retailer incentive colors. Maybe one day. Maybe they'll reprint them in the trade paperback or something. Daryl Warren Johnson, Walter Simonson, Kevin Eastman of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fame. So I'm sure Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles super fans recognize Usagi Yojimbo because he's made a lot of guest appearances in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics. But his own comic is great too. Myra Caligari. There's so many of these. I'm just going to pan over all of these and dream of how I could be rich and be collecting all of these variant covers. So IDW is definitely doing like the variant cover, trying to like sell a few more of these kind of thing. But I think, yeah, everyone should read Usagi Yojimbo. The early volumes had kind of like a rougher cartoon style, and I feel like in his old age, he's kind of like worked out the kinks of his style, and he's come up with a very fun, clean, like perfect Japanese story telling style. I think his daughter does the Julie Sakai. Yeah, she does these cute little Usagi Yojimbo comics too that are sometimes included as bonuses. I might collect those. If I were to collect one of these kinds of variant covers, I'd go for the Julie Sakai ones. All right, I'll have to go looking for that. All right, there we go. So I can't wait for issue 2, which I have. I'm just too lazy and too slow at reviewing these to get caught up. But I will be getting caught up with Usagi Yojimbo, and I will be eagerly awaiting the next issue. So we're not going to 10 minutes. I'm number one Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. This is my workstation. Hopefully I don't have any like doxable material down here, but work is going to get done. I'm done with overtime season at work. Things are going to be happening. I'm excited. Love you. Catch you later.